What's going on, guys? Welcome back. It's been a while since my last video, but you'll be seeing much more of me over the next few weeks, since I'm finally on my winter break, so I have a lot more time to work on videos for this channel. And today I'm going to be bringing you something a bit different than what I've done in the past, or at least in a little while, because I've seen a lot of films over the last month or so, but I haven't had enough time to review them individually. So I figured, why not combine them all into this singular video? I considered saving these for my end-of-year ranking, but I have a lot more to say about them than what I would be able to fit into a small 30-second to 1-minute clip in a larger all-encompassing video of everything I saw this year. So, without further ado, let's get started. In no particular order, I will be talking about Beetlejuice 2, Wicked, War of the Rohirrim, Twisters, and The Wild Robot. Now, Twisters is a movie I watched because my dad really enjoys the original Twister, a film that I have no such affinity for. To me, it's nothing more than a cheesy 90s blockbuster. So, it suffices to say that my expectations for this quote-unquote sequel were on the floor, which is why I did not expect to enjoy this film as much as I did. From the very opening scene, it establishes a far different tone than the original movie. A tone that gripped me because it took itself seriously. I went into the film expecting it to be stupid, but surprisingly, it's a story rooted in something human and relatable. It's about this main protagonist overcoming her trauma and achieving a goal that she's been afraid to face for most of her life. Glenn Powell, who's become somewhat of a household name at this point, plays the secondary protagonist, and I thought I knew exactly what his character was going to be. The careless, cocky sidekick who doesn't get along with the lead at first, but they form a begrudging alliance. However, he ended up having much more to him than I ever expected. The only thing I've ever seen this guy in before was Top Gun Maverick, and I can't say I was particularly impressed by his performance in that film, but he proves that he's a pretty solid actor here. Same with our lead performer, Daisy Edgar Jones, who I've never seen before, but just like Glenn Powell, she blew me away with her acting talent. Now, of course, there's a level of suspension of disbelief required for a film that has massive tornadoes ripping up the countryside of Oklahoma. It's a little bit hard to believe that the characters survive certain things in this film, but I was able to look past those elements because the characters were so strong. Sometimes that's all I need in a film. Good characters. That's something that 90% of modern blockbusters are completely devoid of, but this one nailed it in that department. Next up is Beetlejuice, Tim Burton's sequel to the nearly 40-year-old original film. One that I enjoy. It's not one of Burton's best films, in my opinion, but it's a good bit of fun, and the same applies to this one. This is the type of movie where plot and characters are secondary. It's all about the good old-fashioned Tim Burton wackiness. I'm surprised that he actually got away with showing certain things in this film, because it's a bit gruesome and over-the-top gory, but in a fun way, a way that makes sense within the confines and context of this world that he's created. With that said, the movie is a bit overstuffed with things. Some plot lines feel like they don't really go anywhere. For example, the one involving Jenna Ortega and her weird ghost boyfriend who wants to send her on a train to hell, or Willem Dafoe, who sporadically pops up at hilarious intervals throughout the film. Certain events occur with little to no cause and effect to incite a narrative beat they wanted, which is lazy writing if I've ever seen it. But these issues are excusable for this type of film, where, as previously stated, the hijinks and Burtonisms take precedence above all else. And now we get to the major talking point of the last month, that being Wicked, which I was invited to go see with a group of my university musical theater friends. Let me just say, that was the perfect way for me to experience this film, because if you'd have asked me before this fall if I was a musical theater fan, I'm not sure if I'd have said yes, but I've slowly been converted over the past few months, and watching this film in theaters was the peak of my character arc, because I had an absolute blast watching Wicked, despite never having seen the original musical and being largely unfamiliar with most of the songs in it. Just seeing my friend George's face when the song What Is This Feeling came on, which she performed later in the week at our university musical theater showcase, or my other friend Bridget turning to me to point out when the actresses who played the original Alphaba and Glinda in the musical made cameos in the film, was something special. And on a filmmaking level, I couldn't find much to criticize, aside from a few strange editing choices at points. I've seen people criticizing the color grading, saying it isn't vibrant enough, but I didn't find that to be an issue, especially considering how well done everything else was. Speaking of which, Cynthia Erivo and especially Ariana Grande blew me away with not only their singing ability, but general acting talent and comedic timing. The casting all across the board was virtually flawless. I couldn't pick out a single individual actor or actress who gave a bad or lesser performance. I'm not gonna say that this film is perfect or that it's my favorite of the year by any means, but I am very glad I saw it, and happy that I was able to see it with the group of people that I did. Next up, we have the real reason why I'm making this video. The film that I saw last night, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, which is, as I came to realize the other day after looking at one of my friend's Instagram stories, the first Middle-earth film we've gotten in a decade. It's been 10 years since The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies hit theaters, which is incredibly hard for me to believe, because I remember going to see that film with my mom and sister in December 2014. So here we are, in 2024, and we finally have a new addition to Peter Jackson's interpretation of Tolkien's Middle-earth. And I've got to say, for me at least, this film did not disappoint. An anime version of Lord of the Rings was one of the last things I expected or even wanted to see. Not necessarily because I dislike anime, and rather because it's a medium of storytelling I haven't consumed much of throughout my life. However, once I learned of Peter Jackson, Philippa Boyens, and Fran Walsh's involvement, it gave me renewed faith in the project, especially after having been burned by 2 seasons straight of The Rings of Power. And I'm happy to report that this film delivered more than what I expected. It gave me what I wanted out of Middle-earth, particularly this Peter Jackson interpretation of it that I've come to love. Call it nostalgia bias if you will, but sitting in the theater, watching the New Line Cinema logo come on screen, accompanied by Howard Shore's iconic One Ring theme, brought me a feeling that I haven't had in a decade. Going to see Wicked with my friends was awesome, but I felt like a bit of an outsider there. Because unlike them, I was going in completely blind. I wasn't seeing an adaptation or continuation of something that I loved. So this was my Wicked. This was me returning to a fictional world that I've loved as long as I can remember. I knew from those opening titles that regardless of the film's quality, I was going to have a good time. And for the most part, I think the film succeeded at exactly what it set out to do, telling an engaging standalone story that works as a supplemental companion piece to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I know the anti-woke idiot crowd is going to have a field day with this one because it's got a strong female lead character. All the while, they're neglecting the fact that Éowyn existed, Éowyn who returns to narrate this film and who this character is designed as a precursor to. With that said, while Hera does embody some of the same characteristics as Éowyn, she is very much her own character with individual struggles that differ from that of Éowyn. Speaking of which, I loved Miranda Otto reprising her role as a Galadriel-esque narrator of sections of the film, one of the many things that made this feel as though it occupies the same world as Peter Jackson's films. Now, I have seen criticisms of the animation in this film, but frankly, I don't feel like I'm in a position to criticize the quality of the animation, because as previously stated, I'm not an anime consumer. I will be completely honest, this type of animation is somewhat foreign to me. What I will say, however, is, as my friend Lucas pointed out to me, the film feels considerably more violent than the previous films in the franchise. While it may not be as gory as something like the Battle of the Five Armies Extended Edition, it feels more raw and brutal in a sense, because we aren't just seeing our heroes mowing down mindless orcs. These are actual people getting killed in quite vicious ways. It being anime is the only reason I can see for them being able to get away with this not having an R rating. On the topic of characters, they're all solid here, in my opinion. The film was long enough to properly establish the relationships between them, so that when the stakes are raised and shit hits the fan, I actually cared about what happened to them, unlike Rings of Power. Some of this is helped by the fact that our antagonist, Wolf, is a truly detestable guy. At first, I thought they were going to take the sympathetic route with him, but I quickly realized, nope, this dude is pure evil. What can I say? Once in a while, it's refreshing to have the villain be an irredeemable, backstabbing monster. Of course, there are little references and tie-ins to The Lord of the Rings, which some might call forced, but I thought they made sense within the context of the film. And there are fun Easter eggs thrown in there for the fans, such as two specific actors from The Lord of the Rings trilogy returning in the film to voice a pair of orcs. I'm not gonna spoil who, so you can enjoy the surprise like I did. And it's all topped off by a beautiful tribute in the end credits to Bernard Hill, the real King of Rohan. And finally, last but certainly not least, we have The Wild Robot. I literally finished watching this movie like 20 minutes ago, and I went into it fairly excited. I was 99% sure I would enjoy it. I was so sure of that I bought the DVD, for crying out loud. But whenever I hear people really hyping up a movie, saying it's absolutely fantastic, the greatest thing since sliced bread, I always lower my expectations a little bit. And to say that this movie blew my expectations out of the water is putting it lightly. This is just a beautiful film. It tackles themes of found family, parenthood, overcoming adversity by working together, and acknowledging your uniqueness as being a strength rather than a weakness in a fairly unique way that doesn't feel like it's retreading familiar ground. I half expected it to be derivative of films like The Iron Giant and some such, but it was nothing like those. In fact, it kind of subverted what I think a lot of people's expectations for it were. For one, I was surprised how much morbid and dark humor they were able to cram into this film, particularly at the beginning with the family of death-obsessed possums that are a little bit too eager to see the young Gosling Brightbill die in increasingly horrific ways. And it's a surprisingly fantastic voice cast that they were able to pull together for this, with stars like Bill Nye, Ving Rhames as an eagle, or Mark Hamill as a bear, even Kit Connor, who voiced Pantaleimon in His Dark Materials, voices Brightbill in this film, and he was most definitely a standout, as well as Pedro Pascal, who completely disappears into his role as this mischievous fox character. Of course, Lupita Nyong'o kills it as Roz, the wild robot herself. This is probably the best original DreamWorks film we've gotten in a long time, and a return to form for them after the lackluster Kung Fu Panda 4 earlier this year. I wouldn't say it's quite as groundbreaking as Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was, which has honestly become one of my favorite films ever. I mean, no hyperbole when I say that. The animation in this film didn't blow me away by any means. It was well done and serviced the story they were telling, but it wasn't as game-changing as some other animated films in recent years, strictly from a visual perspective. With that said, 2024 is shaping up to have been a great year for animation, with this Piece by Piece, Inside Out 2, and War of the Rohirrim. It's been a far better year for the medium of animation than the previous one, which was pretty unremarkable, aside from the obvious exception being Across the Spider-Verse. This year is already rivaling 2022 for its amount of fantastic animated films. And that's pretty much it for this video, discussing all the recent 2024 movies that I've watched. There are a few that I skipped over for time's sake, such as the new John Williams documentary, which I recommend all of you go check out right now, especially those film music nerds out there like me. But I'll be back very soon with some more end-of-year videos. First up is going to be my top 5 musical scores of the year, which I'm currently writing the script for at the moment, and we'll see if I end up making my movie and TV show lists the same video or 2 separate videos like last year. But you guys let me know. What are your thoughts on these movies, if you've seen any of them? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Just whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.